Talk about President Trump's former national security advisor and now never-Trumper John Bolton. He says President Trump's call with Vladimir Putin and the potential meeting that could be coming up means that President Trump, in essence, is surrendering to his Russian counterpart. Here's the clip itself so you can hear it, so you're not just taking it from me, and then we'll talk on the other side.
The positions that Defense Secretary Hegseth announced in Brussels, which I'm sure I'd be stunned if Trump didn't convey them directly to Putin in their phone call, constitute terms of a settlement that could have been written in the Kremlin. Maybe they were written in the Kremlin and got out in propaganda channels. But it's a complete reversal of the U.S. and NATO position on a number of issues. For example, up until today, the official American position was that Ukraine should be returned to full sovereignty and territorial integrity. That's gone. The question of NATO membership as far back as 2008 had been that ultimately Ukraine would become a NATO member. That doesn't look like that's around anymore either. Putin has scored a whole series of victories today. It's hard to encompass them all.
So what do you make of that perspective, basically saying that Putin is guiding President Trump? What do you make of that? That was my interpretation.
Well, that's basically what he's saying. I mean, it's pretty hard to, I think, come away with any other interpretation. Look, I mean, John Bolton here he's basically sounding a lot like the Russian collusion hoax people back in 2016. I mean, this is basically Operation Crossfire Hurricane, literally 9-10 years after the fact. It's kind of sad to see because, you know, John Bolton once upon a time was a very serious figure. I mean, you could like him, you could criticize him there, but at this point, especially after the book that he published, he really does seem to be nursing a very petty personal grudge. He is not the first, and he will not be the last person to go down this road when it comes to Donald Trump. Trump just seems to have that effect on a lot of people there. You really kind of end up loving or hating him, and John Bolton, I guess, is firmly in the latter camp. Look, on the issue of Russia-Ukraine, I have been a realist on this issue ever since day one. Terrence, my question, as someone who assesses geopolitics and foreign policy, I look at every single conflict around the world and I say, what is in the American national interest? Period, full stop, end of story. That is literally the only thing that I care about there. And that's going to militate, by the way, in different directions depending on the conflict. So, for instance, I think America has a more compelling national interest in seeing through the evisceration of organizations like Hamas and Hezbollah in the Middle East than they do in establishing the exact parameters of the eastern border of Ukraine and the Donbass region. I mean, these two things are just not alike. I think reasonable people can discern that one issue or one region might have a slightly more compelling national interest for the median American citizen and our interests abroad as compared to another region. So all that's to say, I'm a huge fan of what Pete Hegseth is saying abroad. I'm a big fan of what Donald Trump is doing when it comes to Putin and Zelensky. It's time for this war to end. It has been way too long. Way too many people have died. And ultimately, for what?